big smile.
3, 2, 1, 0.
So we're going to go see the Space Shuttle Enterprise, which was the original prototype. I remember when they had the campaign from Star Trek fans to have the Space Shuttle nicknamed Enterprise. And as a Star Trek fan myself back then, I was elated that the Space Shuttle got the name Enterprise. Unfortunately, the Enterprise never made it into orbit.
Space, the final frontier.
These are the instruments that were used when it first did a flight test in 1977. And in 1998, starting in 1998, they replaced them with more modern instrumentation.
There are 2 men on board the Enterprise, and the 747 is a crew of 4. All are wearing parachutes and oxygen masks for this very first special flight.
Seen, I believe 2 of the other shuttles. Very cool to finally see the Enterprise in person. Heat absorbing tiles all over the underside of the wings and the belly of the ship. As another little extra they have, defying gravity. I think it's some sort of a mixed reality, VR, other things like that. Underside of the Enterprise. As I mentioned, the Star Trek campaign to name it the Enterprise. Remember this? I believe there was a Time magazine or a Newsweek that had the Space Shuttle on the cover and talked about the naming of Enterprise. And of course, any James Bond fan knows that Moonraker used the shuttles quite extensively in the story of that movie. And of course, one of the more disappointing things was that it never made it into space. They did not have some of the tiles, a toilet, main engines, things like that, and they had changed some of the design. So retrofitting the original Enterprise for spaceflight was just going to be too expensive. So mostly just did atmospheric testing. The last official work that the Enterprise actually did was in 2003 when the Space Shuttle Columbia disintegrated upon re-entry, and they brought the Enterprise back out of storage to try and do some tests and determine what might have happened. 50,000 bricks in this Lego mosaic of the Enterprise flying over New York City. So now let's take a visit over to the Concorde. And here is the legendary Concorde aircraft. This is a British Airways model. Another plane I found totally fascinating as a kid and dreamed I'd be able to fly on it. When I was a flight attendant, they actually have, you can non-rev, you can fly on other carriers for a discount. So you could do that on this aircraft, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'll be able to actually fly on this aircraft and it won't cost me $2 grand or something like that. The only problem is, as a non-rev, you're flying standby. You're flying if there are seats available. There were not often a lot of open seats, and so waiting and hoping that maybe you get on is a tough challenge, especially when there are not that many flights going back and forth across in the Concorde. We're going to be taking you on a sort of a closer look at the inside and a quick tour of the British Airways Concorde that here is at the Intrepid Museum. go inside, take a quick look at a couple of shots of the inside of the interior and the cockpit. Talk a little bit about it. I just took the tour. They have a guided tour at the Intrepid. It's an extra charge, about $15 to $20 depending on the date. And it's an hour-long tour. They take you up inside, tell you about the history of the Concorde, what service was like and things like that. And you do get to visit the cockpit and take some pictures and sit inside. So let's go up and take a quick look at the Concorde. So never did get to fly on one of these. For those of you to remember the Concorde flying, of course, when they landed to help the pilot's visibility, you would see the nose droop down towards the runway. And then, of course, it would straighten up for flight.
Watch your head, sir.
In 1976, two Concordes, one from Air France and one from British Airways, took off simultaneously to mark the plane's first supersonic passenger flights. In all, 20 Concordes were produced, with 6 of them being prototypes and 7 each entering production and service with Air France and British Airways. We were able to sit on the aircraft, and our guide, using an iPad, helped tell us facts and history about the aircraft, the service. We got to look at menus, typical menus for flights. There wasn't, the aircraft itself wasn't that luxurious, but the service was, of course, very elite. Many celebrities enjoyed flying on the aircraft, and it was interesting to hear some of the history. I knew a lot myself, but there was a lot of extra stuff that we learned while on board. While a typical jumbo jet might take 7 hours to cross the Atlantic between, say, London and New York or France and New York, the Concorde could make the journey in just about 3 hours. The Concorde had a sparkling safety record until July 25, 2000, when an Air France Concorde burst into flames and crashed. The plane had caught fire after a blown tire ruptured the Concorde's fuel tanks.
Now, like I said before, to the left, immediately you'll find a seat. You can sit there.
All right.
Just try to squeeze your way through.
Any technological updates?
Very little for Concorde. In the 90s, they added a few digital systems, but other than that, that's it. Other than the interior also went through a few changes, but not real like to the left when you walk by.
Concorde was a pretty amazing airplane, fastest passenger airplane ever. Just a fantastic airplane, very interesting to go inside and and get a little bit more information. So this was a great tour, enjoyed it. Hans was the guide and he gave us a lot of information. It was really cool to be on the airplane and get a little more information about the history and actually be on there. It's one of the, I think it's the, he says the only Concorde in the Western Hemisphere that you can actually board, get on the airplane and see it from the inside instead of aboard the aircraft. So it was very cool, definitely recommend this. Thanks for joining us. Remember to like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, comment down below. Thanks for joining us and have a good time all the time.